My name is Captain Andrew Peterson, and tonight I am not telling you about medals or missions or victories. I am telling you about a soldier who survived the battlefield but could not escape it, and his name is Ryan Carter. And to the world he came home a hero with parades and handshakes and flags waving in the streets of his small Ohio town where people clapped his back and told him how proud they were. And his mother cried in his arms, saying, "Thank God you're home, son." But nobody saw what was hiding behind his eyes, because while Ryan was standing in front of them, smiling politely, his mind was somewhere else, somewhere loud, somewhere burning, somewhere that never slept. And the first night back in his own bed, he stared at the ceiling until dawn, because silence had become more frightening than gunfire, and every creak of the house felt like movement in the dark. And when he finally slept, he woke up shouting the name of a man who had died in his arms 2 years earlier, and his wife, Sarah, shook him awake, terrified because she did not recognize the man breathing hard beside her. And this became their new routine. Ryan pretending he was okay during the day and fighting ghosts every night. And at first he tried to be strong. He went back to his job at the hardware store, shook hands with customers, laughed at jokes. But one afternoon, a customer dropped a box behind him, and Ryan hit the floor with his hands over his head before he even knew what he was doing. And when he realized where he was, he stood up, red-faced, ashamed, because people were staring at him like he was broken. And from that day on, he stopped going out unless he had to, because restaurants were too noisy, and supermarkets were too bright, and movie theaters were impossible because explosions were not just sounds. They were memories, and Sarah begged him to talk, but he could not explain how the war followed him into every quiet moment. Into the shower, into the car, into the space between one heartbeat and the next. And then, one night, a tire blew on the highway, and Ryan did not pull over like a normal man. He dove out of the car, rolled across gravel, and lay flat on the ground, scanning the darkness while traffic slowed around him. And when police arrived, they found a soldier, not a criminal, but a man who had forgotten how to be safe in peace. And that was the night Sarah cried and asked him why he was slipping away. And Ryan said the words he had been afraid to say, "I don't know how to come back." And so he began the long journey that nobody ever sees in movies, the one where courage looks like sitting in a waiting room at the VA, surrounded by other men who once kicked down doors and now struggle to open themselves. And he learned words like PTSD and survivor guilt, and learned that injuries do not need blood to be real. And he sat in therapy rooms where silence weighed heavier than body armor. And he learned to breathe through flashbacks and to write down the names of the men he lost so they would stop chasing him in his dreams. And sometimes it helped, and sometimes it didn't. And there were nights when he stood in the bathroom gripping the sink, staring at his reflection, whispering to himself that he was not still there, that he was home, that the war was over. And slowly, slowly, he began to believe it. Not every day, not every hour, but sometimes. And those sometimes became minutes, and then moments, and then evenings, where he could sit on the couch with Sarah and watch a movie without scanning the room. And one afternoon, he stood in front of a classroom full of teenagers and told them not about killing or winning, but about fear and healing, and how bravery sometimes means asking for help. And a boy raised his hand and asked him if he was a hero. And Ryan paused because heroes are not supposed to be haunted. But then he said a hero is someone who refuses to give up, even when the fight moves inside their own mind. And now I want you to see him sitting on his porch as the sun goes down, holding a cup of coffee. He forgot to drink because he is watching the street, not for danger, but for peace. And a neighbor's dog barks suddenly, and his shoulders tense, but he breathes in slow and deep, and the tension fades, and he closes his eyes and lets the quiet settle around him. And for the first time in a long time, the war is not louder than the moment. And this is how his story ends. Not with fireworks or applause, but with a man learning to live again. And with the truth that coming home is not the end of the battle, it is the beginning of healing.